We wake up early in the morning, not just because we have to, but because we want to. There's always something needing done, whether it's working in the garden, collecting eggs, or feeding animals. It's quiet work, but it means something. We didn't always live like this. Truth is, we lost a whole lot before we found our way. We even lost each other for a while. If you've been watching our channel for a while, then you see that every week we're posting these beautiful and romantic sequences of our life onto YouTube. It hasn't always been like that. Only a few years ago, Bree and I were actually divorced and living separately. We really would like for this video to inspire or speak to somebody who is going through something similar or maybe has gone through something similar. Today we want to talk about redemption and finding your way back home. So we put this little raspberry trellis in and planted raspberries here this year, and these trees have gotten so big that the raspberries can't get the sunlight that they need to. So unfortunately, we have to move this raspberry patch over next to the garden. The bad part about that is that I actually cemented these posts into the ground. I'm running to get the tractor right now to see if we can get them out of there. It might be kind of a chore.
So we had our first son when I was 17. We got married when I was 19. You know, jumping from carefree teenagers to now your parents, and then our life just kept going. We just kept growing our family. We just kept pushing on. But in the meantime, life happened. You know, you start growing apart, resentments happen, bitterness grows, and we didn't take a lot of time to work on ourselves as much as we should have, and it showed up later in our marriage, which ended up in divorce. And so we divorced, and it was really, really difficult. I feel like it kind of had to happen, and I'm not saying that God caused our divorce. I think He used what was broken and made it into something even more beautiful. That is pretty apparent now that we've gone through it, how God really worked through our pain and through our suffering, and we had to forgive each other ultimately. You know, when you get down to the nitty-gritty, forgiveness is the ultimate thing that Cameron and I had to work on together in order to grow something beautiful and to keep living our lives happily, and not just living it to get through it, but to enjoy it together.
Our story isn't without pain or failures. In fact, it's full of both of those things. Going from being rowdy teenagers to having a baby and experiencing early adulthood put serious strains on our relationship. In a desperate reach to provide for my new family, I began working around the clock in my early 20s, which was a huge mistake looking back. I leaned so hard into the role of provider that I failed to be there emotionally as a husband and father. Bree and I never put a priority on learning to communicate until it was too late and all the struggle felt beyond repair. It took us a couple years after our marriage had fallen apart to realize that we'd been so busy throwing blame around, we'd forgotten how we still shared all the same dreams, not just for our relationship, but for the life we wanted to give to our kids. Well, it just started downpouring, so the rain totally blew it for us. Hopefully it lets up soon here. We were able to get most of the raspberry patch done. We'll finish that up in a minute. All right, we got that done. Raspberries are in. I've just got to cement in the posts. We should be ready to roll. Hopefully this area is a lot more direct sun, and I'm optimistic that they're gonna grow a whole lot better. So I kind of realized that we've talked a lot about the garden this year, but we never actually showed you all the things that we were growing. So I'm gonna walk you through that for a second and give you a little tour. As I think Bree mentioned in our last video, the tomatoes are the thing that I'm the most excited about this year. Now, we did all indeterminates, which in the past we did a lot of bush tomatoes. So I put this trellis system up, which is just some T-posts and some cattle panel. We're growing beefsteak, black brandywine, sun sugar, and Amish paste. Got some cherry tomatoes in there. You've got some slicing tomatoes and some canning tomatoes. They are getting so big right now. You can see they're almost to the top of the cattle panel. We mended the soil with manure. I've used some organic fertilizer on them, and then we also mulched them with leaves. So they've just been like taking off like crazy. We had kind of a weird start to the season. We had frost and freezing temperatures until about June 1st. I think our last frost date was May 15, and it just stayed cold way longer, which actually really affected our crops, and we lost some early cucumbers that we had planted, lost some other plants, but luckily we had plenty of time and we could still get things planted that needed to be planted. From there, we kind of transitioned into super hot weather that the last 2 to 3 weeks we've had a serious heat wave, and it's been in the 90s. which also isn't always the best thing in the world for plants, but it's worked really well and everything's really taken off. We've had to manually water things a lot because we've had next to no rain. Right behind me here, you can see 2 rows of carrots. If they turn out this year, I think we'll probably do a much larger planting of them next year. Now we have some cabbages right behind me here that are totally rocking out. And we have 10 of them planted and they're all looking really good. I did start cabbage from seed this year. I was super stupid and I left my seed tray outside, and our chickens were free ranging at the time and they actually totally destroyed it, which was terrible. But I ended up finding some at a local nursery and put those in the ground back in mid-May. And those are looking really, really good. And I think by, I would say sometime in August, we'll be harvesting those. I've got some kohlrabi that we planted right here just for snacking, and those are really about ready to harvest. You can see them under there. They're looking really good. They're huge. And we've got a few of them here that we should be cutting out of there and putting salt on them later this week. Behind me right here, we have pumpkins. Now we planted some jack-o'-lantern style pumpkins for the kids to carve this year and for us to make different little pies and things like that with. I think they're gonna take up probably this whole patch right here. There's another one right behind me right there that's also really thriving and doing well. They have a ton of flowers on them, and I think we're probably gonna get, 5 to 8 pumpkins off of each plant, so that would be really awesome. Everything behind me right here is potatoes. I did 2 different types of potatoes. I did Yukon Gold and I did a Redskin variety. I cannot remember what they were called. Kind of a weird thing, and this is something that happens in the heat. The Yukon Gold did really well, and they're very bushy, and we actually hilled them up with leaves. But the Redskin potatoes in the heat totally bolted up, and they got really tall and scrawny and skinny, and they're just not looking that good. I don't think those are probably gonna yield a whole lot of potatoes on each, but I do have a lot of hope on the Yukon Golds. We planted a bunch of corn back here too, and I got the seeds from Berlin Seed. The variety is called Delightful. So you have the corn right there on the edge of the garden, and right next to it we did sweet potato. This is our first time planting sweet potato. It's starting to get big, long vines on them, you can see right there, and we're really excited to see how these turn out because we love sweet potato. It'd be awesome to grow these more in the future. That brings me over to the raised bed. So we have a whole bed of peppers right here. We have a bed of cucumbers and squash on the far end there. We have a zucchini and another pumpkin over there, and then we did a big strawberry bed right here. We did a few different varieties over here. Now we did bell peppers, which are just kind of your standard red and green, bell pepper. And then we did jalapenos, we did poblanos, we did Jimmy Nardellos. We mulched them with leaves, and we have virtually no weeds in the bed, which is a really cool thing about mulching. In between the peppers, we did another little row of onions, and you can see those are pretty tall and looking really good. We wanted to kind of test out just exploring more of the space. Usually we would have just put peppers in this bed and nothing else, but we wanted to fill in the gaps with something that was productive. So take a look at these. The Jimmy Nardellos are already getting some pretty big peppers on them. Well, you can see them there, and those will eventually turn red, but they're about, I would say, 5 inches long now. So those are coming in really well. Over on this side, we've got some jalapenos coming in right there. So everything is blossoming and doing really well in the heat. Raised beds drain out a lot quicker than just direct sowed crops. So we're trying to water it a little bit more often when it comes to the raised beds. Now this squash plant right behind me, it's going crazy. I've been using the elastic string that I got from M.I. Gardner on both the tomatoes and the squash. It helps me to kind of identify where the main stem is once it gets bigger and thicker, and it also helps to train it up the trellis so it's growing where we want it to. Cucumbers right here, and these are all English cucumbers, and then we have some homemade pickle cucumbers, which are the smaller ones. And just for your reference, English cucumbers are the really long, skinny ones. We really like those. I lost all of my cucumbers when we had that frost, that super late frost that we had. So I had to replant these, and in a matter of a couple weeks, they've totally blossomed up, and the warmer soil and the warmer temperatures have really helped with that. So I'm confident that these in the next month will be climbing up that trellis pretty far too. Now I'm doing a little experiment with this tomato plant behind me. This is an indeterminate beefsteak tomato, and I planted it in one of these little these little plant bags, and I filled that with
compost and soil and manure. Then I also mulch the top of that with leaves. I put one of these T-posts up here and I've just been tying this off to it. Now this method here is called single stemming, and there's basically how you would grow a standard tomato where you're just trimming off suckers and things like that. With single stemming, you're trimming off a whole lot more. And the idea is just to keep mainly the main stem with a couple of offshoots. And I want to compare if there's a higher yield with single stemming, if I get more tomatoes. I just wanted to try that method out.
People say to count your blessings, which is what we have found ourselves doing. It's easy to look back at your history and isolate the negative circumstances. The older we get, we find it's those very nuances that shape the people we've become. There are millions of people who have gone through heartbreak, even divorce, and haven't found the light at the end of the tunnel. We count ourselves blessed to be some of the few who were able to break the pattern, to cast blame aside and ask ourselves whether all of these imperfections, all of these hardships might just be what makes us human, what makes us capable of sharing and experiencing love in its purest form.